And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Benched with Bubba, episode 752. Main events have begun, folks. We have 4 main event drafts in the books. Thus, we have main event ADP. We're going to compare main event ADP to OC ADP here on today's show. But first off, you can find me on Twitter at BDentric and my co-host, as always, on Twitter at BreakingBen_T. Ben Tid, how we doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Bubba. I'm excited to talk main events because I have my first one in a couple of days, like we were talking about before. And I just noticed this now, but it's like you're talking about the state of Maine on the banner we got going on right there.
Oh, I'm an idiot. Yeah, see, this is what happens when you're trying to multitask a million things in one day. I'm going to edit that real quick. Good catch early. I'll tell you that much. Yes, we'll change that main event. There we go. But
There we
state
go.
of Maine, main event. Main event might be bigger than the state of Maine when we're all said and done. So I got that going for him as well.
Yeah.
But I figured this is actually a good episode for you because, like you said, you're going to be researching for your main event on Saturday anyways when you go to the castle known as Mike the Bounce House, which should be exciting. And well, let's let listeners know what's the plans this weekend, because Mike's got a few different drafts going on. You're in one of the mains. It's basically the NFBC's new hub for the year until they kind of. I saw an email that the NFFC is returning to New York next year, so it looks like this is kind of like maybe a way to get the NFBC back in business over there.
Yeah, sounds like it. So it's basically like Vegas Light, I think. We're starting out. Well, I say we. They're starting out, I think, on tomorrow. No, wait. Today's Thursday. Yeah, I think there are people already there right now. I know Ambrosius is there, who's head of NFBC or NFC for that. I don't know if there's any drafts today, but they're going to do some March Madness stuff, I think. And then tomorrow is a couple of auctions at least. 2 mains on Saturday. I think the ultimate draft's at 6 on Saturday night. So I'll be in the 2 p.m. main and I'll be driving down to New Jersey that morning on Saturday. And then after the ultimate that night, it's going to be Madness at the MTM house. And it is a pretty big house. So he sent us a flyer with the address. I took a look, and it's a very nice house. So I think I've seen pictures of his basement before too, from when they had the ultimate there last year. And it should be a fun party. And I will be driving back Sunday morning. They are doing I think there's another draft on Sunday, but they're also doing KDS for the Vegas mains next Saturday at Mike's house, or at least in the hotel. So it's going to be a pretty jam-packed weekend for everyone who's going to be there all 4 days. Just a couple days for me, though.
That's awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing how it all pans out. Obviously, we'll be in touch throughout some of that. I'm going to leave you alone to do your thing, obviously, but we'll chat along the way. And Ben will be back next Thursday to kind of give how the draft went and get a lot of other stuff in gear. It'll be like the last full weekend of drafting before the season starts. We have 2 weekends left essentially before the U.S. season starts. Japan series starts next week. Then we got about another week before. A week and a half before the U.S. season kicks off here. So we'll get that all round up, and I'm looking forward to hearing how the party goes since we're going to the Vegas party on Friday night. Gives me a little taste of what they have in store for that one. All right, let's get caught up on some of the news and notes over the last week or so, and we'll start up top here with your New York Yankees. We've talked Luis Eel missing at least 3 months, and now Garrett Cole's going to miss the season with Tommy John surgery. How excited should we be about Will Warren, I guess, is the best way to preface this without bringing too much pain?
I'm moderately excited about Will Warren. I wish I had him in more DCs. I switched it up early. I had like a Chase Hampton in one of mine. Of course, I think he has Tommy John now, so that was for nothing. But, I mean, Will did struggle when he got called up last year. So, if anything, it would kind of suppress his price. But I don't think it's going to happen, though, at least for main events. I think people are going to go on that top prospect upside that he carries with him. And I haven't looked at his actual ADP since we have gotten main event ADP so far for Warren, but I'm pulling up his minor league stats right now. So kind of struggled last year in AAA. He had a 5.91 ERA over 109 innings, but he was sub 4 the previous 2 years before that, and both were 129 innings. So he's stretched out. Warren is for potentially pitching the entire year if the Yankees need him to. I mean, if they do, I guess I don't know if that's good or bad. Necessarily depends on what happens with the rest of the rotation. But yeah, as for Cole, I mean, I avoided him in DCs for this very reason. And I know, I don't know if you've been saying it on your pods or I just been hearing it elsewhere, but it's always annoying when you avoid someone, then they get hurt. But I guess It's good for the teams that you already drafted, but going forward, it's a little tricky because that's one fewer player that your opponents will be targeting. So, but I mean, in terms of real life baseball, it stinks with the Yankees. They gave him that contract and I was hoping they wouldn't, but you can't control what your team does, as you know as a Giants fan. So
yes, thanks for bringing it full circle, Ben.
I wanted us to be equal in our sorrow right now.
Yes, yes. But yeah, it's one of those things. Like you said, I have 0 Cole shares. I've been adamantly like I'm not drafting Garrett Cole this season. So you don't. Again, it's not like you're not happy someone gets hurt, but it's more the disdain of like, well, there's one less player to be drafted, like you said, that skews things up. And there's a lot of injuries right now that's happening too. So a lot of moving pieces there. Will Warren's ADP in the 4 main events, 303, went all 4 mains. So the crew is on him. He'll be, I'm guessing, because one of those drafts was after Cole's officially getting Tommy John surgery. He went as high as 291. We'll see how that continues to maybe shake as things get said and done on that one. All right, Gunnar Henderson. I'll start with him. He's still sidelined. He's starting to do baseball activities. The hope is opening day, but Jackson Holliday's been playing shortstop, Ben. If you needed to, what would you do with Gunnar Henderson, who over the 4 main event drafts still has an ADP of 10, going as high as 6?
Yeah, so actually the last 2, he went 8 and then 6 last night. And because I'm picking 9th on Saturday, I'm kind of hoping that his ADP stays down there because I think he'll be fine come opening day. Which I'm sure you feel good about drafting Gunnar yourself because you took him right before this happened, I think.
Yeah.
And you kind of got a discount.
My first share of the whole season, I got him at 7. So it was like a huge discount. I got him at 7. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll take him. And then, never fails.
Yeah, but I'm confident. I think someone said the timetable for this estimates that he'd be good to go by the 21st. So there's 2 weeks till opening day, and he should be ready with a week left. So I'm pretty confident that he'll be okay, as long as he doesn't aggravate it, of course. But assuming everything goes as planned from now, I'm fine taking Gunnar even this weekend, like I said.
Yep, I'm with you. I'm good taking him. So I can't remember if it was in our Discord on a different show or something. Someone mentioned the point that even if because it seems like they're taking their time for good reasons, and even if he starts on the IL and he misses a week or 2 to the season, getting in 5 to 5.5 months of Gunnar Henderson is still pretty darn good at that ADP. So it's not like it's something that's going to be a drastic situation yet. Now, if he has a setback, that's another conversation for another day. But as of right now, they're pretty confident with the slow movement through that situation. Bobby Witt Jr., who I was going to mention, was hit by a pitch on Wednesday. X-rays were negative. He's day-to-day. I'm not changing him at all. He went, I believe, number 1 overall in Aaron Gift's draft from the Discord last night. He was hoping he'd fall to like 7. And like that'd be the biggest gift of all. In my auction, my OLAC I did on Wednesday night, he basically went around his AAV a little higher. I don't have it. Actually, I do have it pulled up. Give me 1 second here. I forgot. I have it sitting right here. For the auction. Never mind, it's not up anymore because I hate how they do that. They change it to the actual snake draft once that goes down. So he went for basically his AAV, give or take. Not much change there. Any change for you with Bobby Witt Jr. right now?
No, and then last night's I just pulled it up. He went 2nd overall behind Ohtani, so they weren't worried about his wrist, and I think he should be fine based on what we've heard so far.
Yep, with you there. Cody Bradford, Tyler Mahle of the Texas Rangers. Mahle left with an arm issue. He's day-to-day. MRI apparently shows no structural damage. Cody Bradford, he's going to start the season on the IL. Both likely started the season on the IL. Let's just cut to the chase on that one. That's what's probably taking place. So Kumar Rocker, who's had a rough spring, looks like he might be locked in now into that rotation. Jack Leiter's having a great spring. How would you assess the back end of this rotation if you were interested, let's say, in this rotation?
This is definitely shaky. This is one of the more fragile rotations you'll see in baseball. Probably the most fragile, I'd have to imagine. So Roster Resource, for what's worth, has removed Bradford already because that's kind of confirmed. They still have Mahle as the SP3 for the Rangers. So so you seem a little more pessimistic about his prospects of making the opening day rotation. So I looked up Leiter when I had to update my rankings this afternoon, and he's having a pretty good spring. I think he has more Ks than innings pitched. The whip's a little high, but it's only a 10 innings sample. Plus, it is spring training, and I'm a proponent of not getting too excited over spring training stuff. I'm a real Debbie Downer when it comes to that. But I think, was it them who have Adrian Hauser pitching for them right now?
Yes, they do as well. Yeah, that's a whole other rigmarole of what are we doing here.
He could be
He's
the replacement for Molly, I guess.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the things people get. But see, he's a non-roster invitee, so he got signed to a minor league deal. They could send him to the minor leagues. He probably get released because he's probably got most veterans have a stipulation in that. So Hauser could make it. It depends on if they want to spend money. Because there's probably, if it's a minor league deal, if he makes the team, there's probably like an incentive boost right out the gate. Again, that's just the behind the scenes stuff with this. Hauser has been rumored, to your point. Kumar Rocker, Jack Leiter, those seem to be the main three for now. But yes, back to your Hauser point. You are correct.
Yeah, I think it was on the FTN pod. They were saying that he's up like 2 miles per hour, Hauser, with his fastball velocity, which he's never been a strikeout pitcher. So maybe this could help him get strikeouts if he were to stick in the Rangers rotation for a little bit of time. But yeah, I'm not making any adjustments with him in my rankings until we actually hear that he would make the team. But just, I don't know, I guess Rocker's been rocky, pun intended. And
well done.
You're welcome. But yeah, so the only one I'd be interested in right now is Leiter.
Yep. Leiter's looked good. I remember I got suckered and he was looking good in AAA last year. I was like, I'll pick him up for $1 in some leagues. I might have started him one. I know I didn't start him every time, thank God, because the starts and the bigs were not good last year, but it's just one of those, another high-end draft pick. You know the pedigree's there between being a prospect and not to mention the last name. Like, obviously, it's in the family genes. There's a lot of skills there with this kid, and maybe it's time for him to click. We'll see. But I am quite interested in Leiter at the back end of drafts right now. His main event ADP 399, as high as 347. It's been picked in 3 out of 4 leagues. I'm guessing he didn't get picked in the first one, and it's been since the news that has changed, would be my hunch. So yeah, definitely a guy that worth a flyer late, as I have a feeling he might have some impacts here. And it's coming to fruition a lot sooner in Texas. When I had Lucas Bury on the Rangers preview, like, we made a running joke when you go down the rotation. It is like it's Ryan should roster these guys. It's an AARP team. And he does, because you have Nady Eovaldi leading the way. He's 35. You have John Gray, who's already had his injury issues. He's 33. You have Molly, who's going to be 31 this year. You have Jacob deGrom, who's going to be 37 this year. And then Cody Bradford's 27. He was the young buck coming into this. Now, obviously, you got Leiter and Kumar that are younger, but you get my point. They're old with injury histories. Leiter, Rocker, and company are going to get plenty of chances this season. Plenty. So keep that in mind. Boston Red Sox, Rafael Devers was supposed to be in a game on Wednesday. That did not happen. He's going to be in a game hopefully Saturday. He's also agreed that he'll DH. He's become a team player all of a sudden, which is great to hear. There's been a lot of different quotes coming out today on that. But something I mentioned on Breakfast with Bubba, and people, like, they see the first headline not playing and panic mode sets in. And then you read the other stuff saying he's still working out on his mechanics in the backfield. Like, he's scheduled to face Buehler and Crochet this week. He's been facing other guys. He took Buehler deep on Thursday. Actually, there's video of this. So he seems healthy. He's just trying to progress. Take that with whatever grain of salt you want. Any concerns with Devers after I made that claim?
Yeah, well, I noticed that his ADP in the mains is like almost 50, which is kind of wild. So it's like over a round drop. So, and I have a pick where he's in the range where he's going now, at least, and based on the min and the max so far. So I might have to decide if I want Devers on Saturday, and I really would have liked to see him play before Saturday. So if he is going to play on Saturday, I don't know if the time's going to work out where I'll feel comfortable taking him. But yeah, this has been annoying. After that one time I took Devers, it's been the only time I have drafted him in that one DC. But yeah, I think I moved him down a little bit, but not to this range. I don't know. Roster Resource has him in the lineup hitting second for the Red Sox. So everything that they've seen suggests that he'll be fine for opening day. And I don't know. It's tough to pay that early of a price for something where he had the weird shoulder injury now. So, like, I was very adamant about being in on Devers in the middle of like DC season, but because spring training hadn't started yet, you had assumed that he would be starting from the get-go because it's been so long. But now that it's dragged on for several weeks now and he hasn't played, I'm not worried about his timing. I'm just worried about the actual health of the shoulder. So this is one of the tougher decisions I'll have to make, and anyone will have to make, I'm sure. But I don't know. For right now, I may avoid, but if he's going around pick 50 in the 4th round in the main, that's a pretty good value if he's fine.
Yeah, I think 50 is a very, very intriguing value, is what I would say. In my auction, my OLAC last night, he went for 16, and I was finger wavering over the button to bid more.
Wow,
Like
that's
that
pretty
was,
cheap.
yeah, and it was a slow bid. Like a lot of guys were kind of like hesitant, and I was so close. Ended up getting Chapman for 13, so I'll take it. But yeah, 16 for Devers might turn out to be a amazing price tag when things are all said and done. So this is the people are speculating, like you said, if you're drafting before he plays or whatnot, real interesting to see where he ends up going in your draft, especially compared to say the following Saturday in Vegas. If he
Right.
starts playing, that's going to be a tremendous difference when all things are said and done. Just one more little quick thing here on the Red Sox, not on the outline, but we talked before the show about it. Lucas Giolito is going to start on the IL this season with a hamstring injury. They call it a very minor injury. They're not overly concerned. They just want to make sure he doesn't make it worse so he can pitch most of the season. Any thoughts on Giolito?
No, he's one of the ones I'll probably take off my draft board. I think I have no interest in drafting him now. He was already kind of going late with the uncertainty coming back from, I think he got the internal brace. That was his flavor of elbow surgery that he got. But their rotation has a ton of question marks now. It's they kind of went from having enough for a six-man rotation to now barely having enough for 5. So, which is good as a Yankee fan. But there's not many. The only one I'm really would target in the draft right now is Crochet, and even he is obviously like he has his own question marks. But Houck, Buehler, Priester, Fitz, no, thank you.
Yeah, I was about to say Priester has not been drafted in a main event yet, probably for good reasons. Fitz has been drafted in one of the 4 drafts with an ADP of 4. He went at 414. Just make it simple. And then Giolito's like a 346 ADP. I did take Giolito in the reserve rounds last night with like my 5th reserve pick. That was before I knew he was going to the IL. Reports thought it was going to pitch the next day type thing. So good times. But yeah, the back end of that Red Sox rotation, not great, Bob.
Do you have a timetable on Cutter for when he's supposed to be back?
He's actually starting to throw this week. I think the goal is like week 3 of April. I think that's what I heard last 3, maybe the last week of April. But right now, if he keeps progressing the way he is, he at most misses the month of April. But he's supposed to be back sometime, which makes me kind of still want to take a chance on him, honestly. Being a knee
He's still
injury,
in my rankings.
Yeah, because I've hauled in on Cutter before this happened. I've taken a couple shares as things drop, but like I can't go all in knowing it could fall off the rails real quickly. But he's progressing nicely. Knock on wood, things are well. ADP's 407. Like that's got to be worth something for you. Got to be worth something. Tony Gonsolin starting the season on the IL after hurting his back in the weight room. That's why I just say just don't lift weights. But no, I'm just kidding. Dustin May is going to join the rotation as Dodgers 5th starter. A lot of people are in love with Dustin May. I'm going to get your thoughts first because people don't like my thoughts. So what are your thoughts on Dustin May?
They'll probably be disappointed with what I have to say too. I don't know. He's like the poster child for why Stuff Plus doesn't really matter to me because how nasty he was before he got hurt, and like he never got the strikeouts to go with it. Also too, May's career high is 56 innings in 2020. So go figure. It's the shortened season, and that's the most he's ever pitched in a year. And he was first called up in 2019. So he can't stay healthy. And he was never, like I said, he's never a big strikeout pitcher. I was listening to the CBS podcast the other day, and they had Nick Pollock on, and he was kind of all for Dustin May. I mean, Nick does focus more on 12-teamers, so that's a grain of salt you have to account for. But he thinks that they'll just let him go to start the year, the Dodgers, and then they have so many people who are already injured that when they come back, they can just replace May with them. So I guess as a late season an early season flyer, it makes sense. But I was kind of more excited to draft Gonsolin than I am May because at least Gonsolin has gotten strikeouts in the past. I mean, May is only 20. Well, he's going to be 27 now, which is still pretty young. I mean, since he was called up when he was 21. But I mean, the win potential could be there. It's just a matter of will he be able to go 5 consistently enough. So I don't know. Did you say what his ADP was?
I'll tell you right now. I do not have it up. It'll take me 2 seconds.
I can maybe find it.
Good old search function here.
288 in mains.
Whoa,
big
as
range.
high as 238.
Oh,
wowzers.
See, I'd be more interested as I guess. See, I would call that as min, or like I said, as a max, so 354. I would take a chance then, but definitely not 238. There's no way. I kind of want that. If I'm taking a pitcher at 238, I want him with me all year.
he's probably in your rotation to start the season potentially at that point.
Yeah, you're relying on him big time, but
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know if he's at that 288. I probably won't be drafting May. But I don't know. We'll see what happens when I'm in the fire of the main event.
Yeah, we're pretty much on the same page. And it came up in the OLAC on Wednesday. I literally just sat back from my chair, from the computer, just leaned back. I'm like, no need to bid here type story. Um, it's a couple of the things you mentioned. It's the career innings pitched in a season. Can't ignore that. So once you max out at 100, which is fine. So, and I don't disagree with Nick if you prepare your draft appropriately, knowing, hey, I gotta have to replace this guy in like 3 months at the most. All right, like get ready to do that. If you can build your team like that, okay, I can see the argument for that. But my biggest argument, besides the innings thing with Dustin May, he's an awesome gift machine. Like Rob Friedman loves him, big fan of him. But if you look at the stat lines in the strikeouts department, like they're not horrific, but they're not the guy everyone thinks he is. Everyone thinks he's just this filthy, nasty, I'm going to strike everybody out guy, and that ain't it. And when he's not locating the slider and getting the chases on that, his fastball is not that unhittable, folks. So that's the problem I have with him. And he's getting his 27, like you said, so maybe he makes some adjustments and gets better and all that good stuff. But for me, especially at that 238 ADP, like there's a lot of things I could do differently in that range, that's for sure. Couple more bits of news here before we talk ADP here, or ADP kind of risers and fallers. George Kirby going to start the season on the IL with his shoulder injury. The Mariners, of course, are saying, it's not major. He's going to take some time off. He'll be ready, and we'll be able to rock and roll. But I hear shoulder injuries, and it's like I almost want to cross you right off. Now, to be fair, Kirby's like a special breed. We know he's an ace almost. So we've talked about it in the Discord. Like if he falls like round 10, okay, I could see myself taking a chance on a George Kirby. So far in the first 4 main events, of course, someone has the name Kirby in my thing, so that's not going to help. His ADP is 144. That's still pretty rich. What's your take on George Kirby as you enter drafting this weekend?
He's off my board. If you're starting out the year hurt, I'm probably just going to let someone else draft you. So nothing more than that. That's just how I've turned into as a drafter.
We're very similar in that regard. Like enough guys already are going to get hurt. I'm just going to sit this one out. It's pretty much where it goes.
You can win without drafting the best player sometimes. I mean, not that I'm saying Kirby's the best pitcher, but you can win so many ways in fantasy baseball. So I'm not going to invite, like a setback onto my team right away. There's no guarantee he'll be back when the estimated time frame arrives. So that's my logic behind that decision.
I agree. Grayson Rodriguez also will be missing time to start the season. I know you're not going to draft him with that same logic you just mentioned. Correct. But my question for you is, how interested should we be in Cade Povich? It's down to Povich and our boy, Albert Suarez. But it's again, Suarez looked great. Povich looked really good on Thursday. Went first Orioles pitcher to go 5 innings, got hit around in the 5th, but stretched him out is the point. Like he's ready to roll. I've been stashing Povich all DC season. Same with Albert Suarez, which we talked about as well, which is terrifying. But Povich has an ADP of 356 in the first 4 mains. Are you interested in a Cade Povich?
I am. I think I have him ranked ahead of that ADP. I'm kind of annoyed. I was telling Cronin this today. Like going into DC season, I was a big fan of Povich, but then the Orioles kept signing starters, and then I stopped drafting him. I think I have him on 1 DC, and then I'm like, well, there's so many guys in between him and the rotation, and then sure enough, now he's probably going to start the year in the rotation. And I feel like they give him a chance over Suarez. Suarez is like a good backup plan because he's done it before. I mean, and I remember, last year we talked about Povich all the time because we were adding him in September, and he was great because he had like a good matchup versus the Red Sox, who were bad against lefties, and he had the White Sox. He dominated. And so I pulled up his stats, and he has 9.2 innings, Povich, 9 strikeouts, 9 hits, and a walk. So that's pretty good numbers. That's a 103 whip, almost a K per inning. And it's just he's been unlucky with stranding runners. He's allowed 5 of those base runners to score. So he's got a 4.66 ERA, but it's a small sample. And so the K and the walk looks really good with him. And that was a big thing he improved on last year, Povich. So I'm going to be targeting him. Hopefully he can stick around, and it's not just like a 3-week thing with Povich. I hope he can actually get a chance to stick for the whole year, and hopefully I can get him.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's funny you said that. We told Curlin because I did the same thing. Once I started signing all these guys, I'm like, well, I still like Povich, but I'm going to try to take somebody else that I feel impacts things better. And goes to show you, here we are.
You
And
never know.
Povich is right there. And I should have just told myself, when you look at the rotation, Grayson's always been hurt. Charlie Morton's getting old. Like, who knows what Sagano is? F1's had his history. I should have just trusted myself in a DC and take the fall on Povich. But Captain Hindsight on these ones for sure. But I'm very interested in Cade Povich coming down the road. Mm-hmm. And if Albert Suarez gets the job, good luck, buddy, because I got you going to in DC, so not going to worry.
I'm going to avoid at all costs. I'm not adding him again this year.
Yep. Recency bias is a tough drug, folks. All right, let's talk about it. We're going to talk risers, fallers, as we compare NFBC Main Event ADP, the first 4 drafts that have taken place, to the March drafts in the OC, which is approaching 35-ish, I think, something like that, give or take. It's been a lot of OCs, and you probably have the exact number, knowing you. But we're going to talk about some risers, some fallers, and whatnot. But first off, why don't you kind of enlighten us more on what we're going to talk about here, and maybe some initial takeaways by looking at this.
Yeah. So we have 36 OCs in the month of March so far through today, that at least finished in March, and versus the 4 main events. So much bigger sample size for the OCs, but that's all right. It's working with what we have. So we'll look at the top 200, or players with a top 200 ADP in the main event is going to be like our starting point. And we're just going to look at, okay, what's the biggest pick differential between their OC ADP and their main event ADP. We're not going to do like a dollar adjustment that Ryan does for his Bloom boards, which is very valuable to do, because the earlier you go in a draft, the more a pick change in your ADP matters. There's more weight to it, but that's why we're within the top 200. We're looking at players who will be drafted on almost every league, or should be at least, and go from there. There are some trends. So when we first pulled it up before we started recording, one thing I noticed was, out of the top 26 main event risers, so their ADP is moving up, 25 of them are pitchers, closers, or starters. So I'm sure listeners have heard, if you've heard of the main event mentioned before on other podcasts, people always say pitching gets moved up. And this is proof in the numbers that's exactly what we've seen in the first 4 main events versus the OCs. It's because it's a deeper player pool. The pitchers on the waiver wire are so bad. For Sports Ethos last year, I did a streaming series for the entire year, and I tried my best, and my ERA was like 4.5 on the season for whether I was going off of matchups or just hopefully a pitcher that would be good and stick. It's not fun, and the whip will kill you too. So, and then conversely, not surprisingly, is that there's about as many pitchers on the fallers list as there are hitters on the risers list within the top 200. So we talk about the risers definitely be pitcher focused, and we talk about the fallers in the main event. It'll definitely be hitter focused. But and one other thing I'll mention quickly. So this for my own use, I was looking at, as I was getting ready for main events for this year, I looked at last year's main event ADP versus February's DCs for this year, comparing how many pitchers go as you move through each round. And it wasn't very dissimilar between the DCs and the mains for last year. For example, after the 7th round in 2024 mains, there were 45 pitchers taken. This year in February DCs, there was 45 taken. And then in mains so far this year, it's 44. So by the 7th round, pick 105, about the same number of pitchers are off the board. So I thought that was surprising. I thought there'd be more movement into the earlier rounds, but you can only move so far up. I mean, people are going to go for hitters at some point once there's good values. So it does slightly get skewed, but overall, not as big of a jump in terms of the entire draft landscape as I was expecting with this little exercise that we did, or I did. But that's all I'm going to talk about with that for now. But yeah, hopefully it'll be relevant for anyone who does play in the main event.
It should be relevant for the main event. It should also be relevant as these last couple of weeks of any draft take place. That's why we're doing top 200 picks. They're players that will be drafted in pretty much all formats, your home leagues, you name it. These players will be involved. Now, the movements might not be the same because different players, different theories, different whatever you like to do, formats, so on and so forth. But this will definitely give you an idea of how things go. And the pitching bump is just very, very interesting to see take place in a visual form just through 4 drafts, just the massive amount of movement in these 4. So again, top 200 ADP. And at the end, we'll kind of mention some just overalls because there's some dudes that are deep in the ADP that are moved a ton due to role changes or injuries and whatnot. We'll stop to the top 200 here, and we'll start with Jeff Hoffman, closer. So usually we talk starting pitchers getting bumped a lot, and there's plenty of that. Don't get me wrong. But the top 4 pitchers we're about to discuss are closers. You have Jeff Hoffman, who has a main event ADP of 74, OC ADP of 112. So he's going from just outside the top 100 into the top like 3/4 of the top 175. Justin Martinez of the D-backs, main event 158, OC 192. So a 37 pick difference for Hoffman, 34 for Martinez. You got Romano at 144 in the main event to 176 in OCs. That's a 32 pick jump. And then Ryan Presley had a 150 ADP in main events compared to 180, which is essentially a 30 pick jump. So these are the 4 largest differential between main event, OC, the only 4 with a 30 pick differential essentially. And they're all closers, and they're all kind of in that maybe tier 2 / almost tier 3 group we talk about a lot. So how do you assess this when you look at it? Because I think it's a combination. You want to lock down your saves. We talked about that many times, but maybe it's also the security of jobs. I don't know. You play in the main event, so this might stand out more to you. But how do you assess the top 4 movers essentially being closers of all people?
Yeah. So last night, So last night I was actually doing my mapping out of my main event for Saturday, using the at the time I only had the 3 main events to go off of, but it was pretty similar ADP, I think. And I was looking at this, at least the closer range of Martinez, Romano, Presley as potentially my RP2, if I wanted to do that or not. Because I think there's like Presley's in that range too. Well, no, he's here. There's a couple other closers in that range that aren't mentioned here because they've already been at that point in the draft. And then what I looked at was how many closers would I be comfortable with as my RP2, or how many do I want to roster ideally? And it's only 24, and there's 15 teams in a main event. So that means that 9 teams will have a decent quote unquote RP2. And most managers probably want to be one of those 9 teams. So that's why these guys are getting pushed up into the 10th round, end of the 10th, early 11th round in a 15-teamer. And it's good to see Martinez get moved up because I've been a Martinez stan all offseason as the Diamondbacks closer. Hopefully everyone's right, along with me, because I was big on him in a couple DCs. I don't know if I want to target Martinez at this new price now because he was kind of going more at his OC ADP in DCs, which was more around 200. But I don't know. I'm confident that he will be the guy, but now you're really paying for it. And then with Hoffman, it's just more of, I think it's the health with him because he had the shoulder concerns when he was offered contracts by the Braves and the Orioles, I think, and they ended up backing out because of whatever they saw in the MRI. But now that we're 2 weeks away from opening day, I think main event drafters see this upside with him as a reliever. And now that he's made it throughout the spring training so far, I think they're more confident that he'll be a pretty reliable RP1. And since there's no committee risk with him, so he's kind of more appealing than maybe someone like Munoz and Duran, who don't always get all their team saves. I think I have Hoffman behind those guys still, but it's a similar range though by ADP and by what I think. So I think that's why Hoffman's rising. It's for that stability as a full-time closer, and the health risks are kind of going away.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think people love Hoffman's upside, healthy, awesome. I agree with you on Martinez. I still like Puck a ton, but Martinez should be the closer there, the primary closer, I should say. I've been drafting a ton of Romano, so seeing him get moved up is a stinger a bit. Presley, I'm not excited about, but I guess he's the closer for now. I don't know for how long, but I know Ryan likes him a lot, so it's an argument we have every time this goes on. And you mentioned some other closers in this range. You got Tanner Scott at pick 100, so he's going after Hoffman. And this one, you get Robert Suarez at 112. So he's another one to offer up to you. David Bednar at 127, Trevor McGill at 128, Alexis Diaz at 141, Kenley Jansen at 143. So there's a ton of closers in that range between basically 75 and 150, as you mentioned. And that's almost all tier 2. Like we've talked about it time and time again. After you get after Iglesias and company, it drops into this world that we're living in. Finnegan will keep coming up too into that world. You'd think if Presley's getting the move, Finnegan should as well. At least in my world. So yeah, we'll see where this goes. But it's a great point you make. If 15-team league, we're comparing 15-team versus 12-team. OCs, you want 3 closers a lot, but you can kind of play the game because there's fewer teams involved and throughout the draft and everything. Like you mentioned, in a 15, you got to go for it. And so it's feeling almost more like a DC in that mindset, watching the ADP than the OC. All right, going down below the four closers now. Hey, more pitchers. Clay Holmes, this is one I was really curious to see what his hike would be. His ADP in the main event is 176. He's gone as high as 166, as low as 187. Both would be higher than his OC ADP of 205.5. And Ben, this kind of surprises me for a couple reasons. I guess one, I think at Clay Holmes is I'm pretty confident in 150 innings, barring an injury. Like I'm cool with that, maybe more. So I guess it's not that much of a crazy situation. It's probably a good floor play there. I just think he's more of an upside play than a floor play with Clay Holmes because he's never done the full season starting pitching. I figured he'd be more exciting than 12s than 15s, but the main event people have spoken so far, and they bumped him up. So what are your thoughts on Clay Holmes?
Main event drafters love their upside. There's no denying that. So out of curiosity, I pulled back up that file that I had where I was referencing how many pitchers are going after each round between last year's mains, this year's, and then also February DCs. So in February DCs, Clay Holmes had a 280 ADP. So he's gone up over 100 picks since then. And there's no way I'm drafting Clay Holmes in the main event. I've been very skeptical of these relievers to starters. I mean, we were blessed last year with Crochet and Lopez and Hicks for a while, but he collapsed. Houck was good at first, but then he collapsed. So I'm sure there were other ones too that I'm leaving out, but there were a lot. So I think people are just assuming that you can make the transition. I'm also a biased Yankee fan after watching Clay Holmes for the last 3 years and walking guys constantly with only 2 pitches to worry about. Now he's got to worry about 6 or 4 that he's throwing, whatever crazy number it is. He could go multiple innings as a closer, but I don't know. Who knows who he's facing in these spring training lineups as well. So people see 5 innings of 5 Ks and they lose their mind. So I'll be letting someone else drafting Holmes in the main event.
Yeah, I like Holmes a lot. That ADP price in the main event is a steep one. I would say 176. The 205 in the OC I like a lot. Again, 12 teamers, 15. So it's multiple picks later for your enjoyment, not just the 25 or 30 picks in general. That's another couple rounds in an ADP for an OC. He went $8 in my OLAC last night. Did not get him, but that seems reasonable to me. Maybe I'm crazy there, but yeah, the price tag of 176 is pretty steep, especially when we have some other guys we're about to talk about on this rising situation, including Christopher Sanchez, who, my oh my, what a monster spring can do for you, Ben. Christopher Sanchez has a main event ADP of 124. His OC ADP is 151. So we're talking about 27 pick difference from Christopher Sanchez, who had a great season last year. Spring has been insanely good for him. We've seen the velo bump, the strikeouts have been great. Are you interested in Christopher Sanchez at 124? We're talking like SP3 probably on your roster.
Yeah, that's kind of where he's going. That's kind of that range. And I do like Sanchez. I don't have him this high in my rankings right now, though. But I feel like every pod they're talking about Sanchez right now, it seems like, because he's throwing 98 or 99, whatever it is. He's got a sinker. He's got a new cutter. So he sounds pretty nasty. I haven't seen him pitch in spring training yet. I haven't really watched much of spring training. That is it. But, I mean, even last year off of what he was doing in 2024, he had a ton of good stats. The only thing that really made me skeptical of him, but I like Sanchez. I haven't drafted him yet, I don't think, was the swing strike rate was only 11.3, and that resulted in the 20% K rate, just over that. So that's not ideal, especially when you're going this high in a draft. It's kind of like in line with what Logan Webb does. But Sanchez's stuff sounds better than what Webb's stuff is right now. So I guess people are hoping that it'll translate into better strikeout numbers, so this will be more dominant with the ground ball upside that he provides. But this is a classic main event riser because, I mean, him and Holmes are your carbon copy of what happens when these main events start. It's just someone does something differently in spring training, they see immediate results, and then everyone wants to hop on board and get a piece of it when it really counts. So what's his min? I says max. It's a 144. So he could fall to me. Or there's a chance that I could draft Sanchez based on the range that we've seen so far If it gets closer to 100, I probably won't. I'd rather go for someone with a little more reliability to their name. I think, and also I think it was Chris Towers that mentioned that we're kind of forgetting that he used to have a walk problem, Sanchez.
Yes, he did.
He only had a 5.8% walk rate last year, which is awesome, and a 32% ball rate. But if he's throwing so much harder now, can he keep those control gains? And I don't think it's been a problem yet in spring training, but it's a small sample, and we don't really know what's going to happen once the season starts. So, I mean, everything sounds great for him. Like I said, it's just tough to adjust that to that new price. And if it's at the high end of that ADP range, like I was saying, I'll be interested. But if it's closer to 100, I'll probably pass on him for somebody else.
We all know what happens. The guy's throwing 98 plus. Like, it's just, not kidding. Not going to go.
Well,
there.
I mean, that's another thing too. Out of nowhere, this guy's throwing so hard so soon. It's scary.
It is. It's something that's sadly something we kind of have to take into account when we're drafting players. You mentioned Logan Webb there, and that profile is in Logan Webb's ADP is 96. You're still going to guess a discount if you think they're the same type guy, but that rise in Christopher Sanchez is quite the rise is the best way I'll put it. And people in the Discord, I have something coming their way from my OLAC last night because they were asking about some price differences. And Christopher Sanchez, if I can find him on here, because I'm blind, he went for $12 last night. $12. That is a hike in ADP and in auction pricing, AAV, for Christopher Sanchez. All right, next up here, we got Nick Pivetta, ADP of 151. I expected this one. His OC ADP is 176. This is a guy that's been tried and true when healthy. Strikeout machine ratios have been okay. Not like they've been really good. They haven't really killed you, I guess. It's more, can he stay healthy? Signing with the Padres makes a ton of sense to me. So this is one of the ones I'm definitely, okay, I get this. This checks out. So what are your thoughts on Nick Pivetta?
I just can't get over the fact that he hasn't been below a 4 ERA in I don't know how many years now.
It's crazy.
So I get that so San Diego is a decent pitcher's park, but I mean he was in Philly before, which is kind of hitter friendly. Fenway isn't really the most homer friendly park. It's more of an offensively friendly park because of the deep dimensions of right field, and he is a righty, so you think that lefties would give him the most trouble. And then it would turn into homers, but not in Fenway. So the ERA is still inflated for whatever reason there. I don't have him ranked this high personally, so I doubt I'll get him. I think someone else will buy into the hype of just a new place. Essentially, it's all it's changed for Pivetta. So I mean, go ahead.
Well, no, finish your sentence. I'm going to ask you a question on something else.
Okay, and he's very similar to Cutter Crawford because they're both low whip guys with fly ball problems and that turn into homer problems. So Cutter has he was a great whip asset because he was like a 110 or lower going in the mid to late 200s, but first full 2 years for him, he was above a 4. But at pick 280 versus pick 150, it's a little different to take that kind of profile. So I know whip is harder to control in season. So I get the appeal of going with, if you have a solid top 2 or 3 starters and you want Pivetta as your SP4, it makes sense, but it's just, it's like the Mackenzie Gore whip. He's had a 1.4 whip or higher the last 2 years. And I know you like Gore. I'm intrigued by him because of the gains he's made, but without seeing that improvement first, you're just going on faith that the pitcher's going to change without, I don't know, like a substantial change to go along with it. So it's tough for me to move up Pivetta when historically he's shown that he can't pitch to a good ERA.
Yeah, no, and that I'm with you there. And it's interesting you mentioned the Cutter things. If you want to take a gamble on him at like pick 404 and say, okay, he's going to miss, 3 weeks or so of the season, but you think he's that profile, that's 250 picks we're talking about here. That's interesting to say the least, which checks out. I want to ask something though. You've mentioned it a few times, your rankings. And we know if people have listened to the show enough, we know what you're referring to with your rankings. Mm-hmm. But my question to add to that is, we all know that at any draft, you have to bob and weave. You have to adjust to what's going on. We know the main event's going to get wild because certain guys are going to walk into a room and just like, these are my guys. I don't care what, this is what's got, and it's going to skew kind of the whole system at some point in time. it's almost like an auction in that regard compared to a regular draft where someone's just going to start spending money and screw up the whole thing. How do you adjust to that with your rankings? Because I know you trust your rankings, you draft off your rankings. I'm not saying you're stuck to your rankings, but like, how do you adjust on that on the fly in an event like the main event where you have your plan? Like you mentioned, you started scheduling out. And I know you don't have just one plan, you have pivots. I'm not clueless to that, but like, how do you go about that? Because you've done all the research, you're very smart with it, so you have a reasoning for having these rankings. How do you adjust?
So I guess with Pavetta's case, say I'm looking for my SP4 and it's maybe I'm in the 130s, 140s range. And for whatever reason, pitching has gotten really pulled up and he's getting close to the top of my remaining starters and I want to pitch a starter right now, then I would maybe pull him down the board and draft Pavetta in that case. It kind of depends on what's being taken and what I think my team needs right now. So it's more like, so I put my rankings out there in a vacuum as like a rough guideline for how I would take players throughout the draft. But I mean, like for example, if catchers are flying off the board and there's so few that are healthy right now, maybe like someone like Austin Wells I'll pull him up, for example, because of where he may hit in the Yankees lineup. So it gets so in real time, it depends on what I think my team needs and then what's available on my sheet. If I'll decide to pull someone up or just hold off based on what my sheet says.
That makes sense. All right. Yeah, you're a smarter pivot than me. That's why I want to kind of give the people I just want to give the people the idea of like, this is how you adapt to it, because drafting is not everybody's forte. We all love to do it, but if you panic, things get off the rails. It's tough to bounce back type situation.
Hopefully no one from Saturday is listening to me right now.
No one listens to me. What are you talking about?
That's not true.
I'm joking. Shout out to Jody Ryan, who gave us a shout before the show. That was nice of him.
Very kind words from Jody for you. Yep.
Yeah. Pete Crow Armstrong. So here we go. First hitter. And of course, it's PCA. RIP, Uncle Ted. PCA has an ADP of 107 in the main. He had a 132 OC ADP. And honestly, if you look back to if you still have that February DC chart up, I bet you he's in the 150 to 60 range at least, maybe far, because he was closer to 200 way back when. It wasn't that not long ago when PCA was back to it. PCA is crushing everything in the spring. People love him. There is zero chance I would ever draft him at pick 107. I don't care. Clip it if you want. I don't care if he has a great season. There's zero chance I would hit that button. What are your thoughts on this jump? Because I knew he would be one of the risers. Didn't think we'd see a 20. This is insane to me.
I'm right there with you. I did not notice this jump with his ADP. I pulled up February's DCs. He was at 139. So
so still not bad.
I mean, it's a 3-round jump and nothing happened. Nothing changed. Yeah. It's
free
just
training.
the profile.
Free training happened, folks.
Yeah, unless he's like batting 1,000 with 10 steals. I don't get it. This feels like the Cabrian Hayes thing last year where he was going early 100s and completely fell on his face. So I mean, I wasn't a fan of Pete Crow Armstrong where he was going in those DCs that I just referenced, and I'm definitely not going to take him here. There's no way.
Yeah, that would just sit out in a big way. Now, one that's kind of interesting. This one, at least, I think, again, going back to maybe what your rankings say, and you have to kind of sit back and think about it for a minute. Victor Robles, he's the next riser here, and he's the second hitter on this chart. ADP close to 158 in the first 4 main events. He's gone as low as 182, which is really palatable to me. 158 is interesting, though, because he had an OC ADP of 181. We're talking about a 24-pick difference. And Victor's been slowly on the climb in the OCs, too, because he starts getting talked about more because, like, when we do the pockets of ADP with Ryan and then when you and I talk about things, you start thinking, okay, this is one of the last potential, because he did it last year, but we haven't seen a lot of batting average assets, like maybe, at the alpha position. You know he's got the steals, and if he's going to lead off for Seattle, like, if he can be 80% of what we saw last year, okay, this checks boxes of things that are interesting. Are you on board with a pick around 150 for Victor Robles, or is this still a little too much of a bump for you?
I think it's too much for me because he's kind of he kind of profiles as a rabbit still. I mean,
yeah, that's fair.
He has no power. I did add him at least in a league, and I had him in a DC last year, I think. So I benefited from his fantastic second half for Robles. But so I pulled up his Fangraphs page. He had 34 steals in 91 games. And I did notice him going higher when I was looking at the draft boards for the mains. And I noticed, I think he went twice at the 10-11 turn. So literally at pick 150. And that's because that person is not going to be able to draft again until pick 180 or so. And when you have to wait 30 picks to go again and you need steals, you're going to take whoever you think is going to provide you steals. And that's exactly what this pick is, I think. It's just someone saying, okay, I need steals. Who's going to go in the next couple of rounds that I may not be able to draft? And they're saying Robles because he's projected by ATC at least for 38. That's pretty high for a projection. Yeah. Really even Steamer has him at 36. The only thing is Zips is pretty low, and I think Zaborski's his name. I think he goes more at like historical comps when he makes his projections, and maybe you see like a 27-year-old who has struggled to break out, and then he finally did. You're a little more skeptical with the follow-up results, what they'll be. So I get that, and that's why I'm hesitant to myself, because we have a little over half a season of sample size where he finally hit. Figuratively and literally, but yeah, I think it's just too much. I would rather, like, if you need steals, there's still the second basemen that are going in the 160, 170 range. But
Jacob Young's at 298.
Oh man, him and his 29 RBIs that we were talking about last time.
I'm just saying, like, if you're looking for the rabbit, like, there's your dude. If you wait, but yeah, the rest of his profile.
I mean, there's I'd rather have Jake McCarthy maybe over Robles. Period. I don't know. I think that he's a much safer player.
I don't hate that. McCarthy's 219.
I shouldn't have said that, but it's okay. I'm being honest with my help for the listeners, but I don't know. It's just way too early for a steals only guy for me, I think. And you mentioned the average. He's projected to hit like 250 Robles, which won't kill you, but it's definitely not a help. So
yeah.
And he's on a bad team in terms of.
Well, I think people see that 311 batting average last year and they expect it again. And like you said, we haven't really seen that from Victor Robles.
Yeah, I mean, he had 299 in 36 games the year before that, but it was 126. So he's had like 420 plate appearances over the last 2 years, and he's hit 300. But he had well over that to start out his career, and he was like a low 200s hitter before that. So the projections aren't buying the batting average gains, and people seem to be thinking that they're going to stick for whatever reason. I mean, he did drop his K rate a lot, Robles. He was in the 20s in the last 2 years, and what I mentioned, 420 play appearances. He's roughly at like 16%, which is a big decrease in the K rate. But we've seen with other players like Josh Lowe last year, he went right back to striking out a ton after cutting his K rate in 2023 or whatever it was. So these gains don't always stick, and it's a big leap of faith just for some steals at that point in the draft.
No doubt about it. I got a couple more starting pitchers here. I'm just going to group them together because they're a bunch of old Fiduddies that are on the move. Kevin Gossman's up to 145 in the main compared to 169 in OCs, and he's had a really good spring, so that's a plus. Nate Eovaldi's up to 191 from 213 in the OCs. Robbie Ray's up to 125 from 145. So out of these three, Gossman, Eovaldi, Ray, which ones do you understand? Or I guess it's the pitchers healthy. We see them moving up, but which ones are you kind of like, okay, this makes sense. This checks in, or are there other ones you're kind of like, I don't know?
Well, I get why they all are moving up. I am not falling for Gossman, though. I
had my OLAC last night. I was like, Tim, I'm like, hey, he's getting better. And I literally, before I clicked it, I again pulled away. That's my trick on this. I push my computer forward, my laptop, and I lean back in my chair and just kind of wait for the next name to like prevent myself from bidding.
You need like a mechanical hand that slaps your hand out of the way or something.
Pretty much.
Yeah, I think we covered him at some point, maybe in an ADP debate, and Gossman's trends over the last 2 years are just awful. I don't care that he's throwing harder. He's a two-pitch pitcher, and he's getting older. And I think Nick Pollock talked about him as well on the CBS pod and talking about how you have to have a feel for the splitter, and he doesn't think it's going to be the same as it once was. And because of like the trends in his K rate and xFIP and things like that, I was already out on Gossman, so I'm definitely not paying this price for him. Eovaldi, I get he's more of a stable. He'll get you 150 solid innings, even if he does get hurt every year. So I get why main event drafters are going after him. A little less appealing in OCs, so that's why he had like a 1.5 round bump. And then Robbie Ray, he's I think the news of the changeup from Scooble, and I was always intrigued by Ray. I think I only drafted him on the Gladiator that we're sharing, but I know Posma took him in the first main event relatively early, but he hasn't stayed that early in the other ones, but he has increased, like as evident from this sheet right here. So I like Ray as a I'd rather have him as an SP4 with upside than relying on him as an SP3 for my mains, but we'll see what happens when I get drafting.
I'm with you there. Like he's an SP4 to me, an SP3. Like that seems like I have to rely on him a little too much for my liking.
Yeah,
with Robbie Ray, but
it's like a luxury SP4 for me.
That's with you. Even in OCs, I feel the same way with Robbie Ray. I just want to mention one thing though that's interesting is like between these three guys, Gossman's going 131 to 166, Ray 190 to 145, which is pretty wide. Eovaldi, it's 189 to 195. Like he's in a pocket pretty much where he's going, no matter what it feels like, where the other two have room to breathe. Where Eovaldi, if you want him, this is where he's pretty much going right now. So don't mess around type thing. So that's just something I noticed going through this. Last one I want to bring up before we talk about some followers here, and we're not going to talk about, I just want to mention the listeners here first, is after Ray, it goes Bednar, Finnegan, Scott, Jansen, Estevez, 5 more closers. So 9
That's
closers
funny.
basically in the top. I'm not going to add it up, like 15 or so. So that just tells you a lot about the need for saves in these formats. The last guy I want to ask you about here, and unless there's anybody else you want to mention before the fallers, is Taj Bradley. This surprised me because there's not a lot of great buzz around Taj Bradley, it feels like. There's more like, can we trust Taj Bradley after last year? We saw such great runs of his, and then others like couldn't find the strike zone, it felt like, at times where he's getting crushed, one of the two. ADP of 180 over the 4 mains. He was 197 in the OCs. Now, given one of the max bid for Bradley's 193, which is almost in line with his OC. So there is some wiggle room with Taj, but he surprised me on this list. So any thoughts on Taj here?
Yeah, he's surprising to me too. The only thing I can think of is just that he has a high strikeout upside, and that's usually what main event drafters are chasing because of the overall component. And at this point in the draft, in your pick 200, you're not getting too many guys that have a 26+% strikeout rate. The only other names that I see kind of in this range are Arrighetti, Clark Schmidt. That's it, really. There's not many others that are at 26% or higher. So I think that's really why he's going up. But I think we're talking about this in the Discord for Bubba and the Bloom Patreon, and the whole Rays rotation going to Yankee Stadium, Florida, has me worried about drafting any of them. So I would expect him to fall, but I think the K upside people are just taking the chance that he'll overcome any ballpark issues that they may face.
For sure. Anyone else you want to hit on here? Or do you want to head to the faller side of things? Because like Gavin Williams, I expected to go higher than this in the differences, but here we are. Your boy Hunter Brown sitting right there.
You mean Mitch Keller? I think there's a typo on the sheet.
Yes, even more closers coming up here. Anybody else you wanted to discuss before we move on to the fallers?
I just hope that Austin Wells stops rising.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Like, yeah, that's annoying.
He's on an island all by himself now because everyone keeps getting hurt.
That's why he's rising too. That's a great point. The last one, again, this is just pure, just makes me laugh. Mason Wynn's still getting a ton of love, and he's having a horrific spring. So people like, my point to that, just quick comment, is the main event people are still trusting the skills, not the spring stats on Mason Wynn. That's what I'm going to get at.
Yeah, 135 ADP right now, min of 121. That's almost an 8th round pick for Mason Wynn in 15 teams.
I have not had many Mason Wynn shares in the month of March. Let's put it that way. He's getting too rich for my blood.
Payne is right next to him in terms of number of picks moved up, but it's a 20 pick difference.
Yep. I've been getting much more Pena Swansons in my life of late.
We have to talk about one that we just saw real quick. Wyatt Langford.
Yes.
Min.
Yeah, dude. I put him on there because I remember he was high on Ryan's list because I was like, okay, well, I know he's a mover in both formats. Boom. Yeah, that's rich. He's going basically top third of the second round. 19 is his min. Max 31. His OC was 37. So yeah, go for it. I love Wyatt Langford. That is a price I don't know if I'm cool with at that point in time. It's tough.
Yeah, I don't have him ranked near that high, so I won't get him. I mean, he's gonna hit third for the Rangers. He's got power and speed potential. I just don't know how much power he really has in his bat. But yeah, I think this one's wild. I did not expect him to go this high. It's been wild to see. I just wanted to touch on him being almost a first rounder in the main event.
Yeah, he's almost a first rounder, and it's one of those guys that I will agree with. Okay, if he finds his like 90th percentile, he's a first round pick next year. I won't disagree with that. But like he went for $27 in the auction last night. $27. Like,
I mean, these people can't really think he's going to be the 19th best player. There's
Yeah.
it's like a 95th percentile outcome. You're paying to lose out on that pick if you're putting it into auction values. So
now that pick 31, you have an Otani or a Witt and then another pick in Wyatt. That's pretty sweet. I'd be a fan of that for sure.
Yep.
All right, let's check out some fallers here. And right out the gate, we're going to have a lot of hitters, but we're going to start with another pitcher, folks. And this makes sense based on what we talked about in the news. George Kirby is the biggest faller, 42 pick differential, ADP of 144.5 in the four mains, 102 in the March OCs. Basically what I'm going to highlight here, and if you could want to add to it, you're welcome to. I think a lot of main event drafters have similar thoughts on injured players as you do when it comes to starting pitching.
And also it's a shoulder, so it's a lot scarier than a muscle in my mind. So it could be something more structural than just a soft tissue, like a lat. But I mean, the lats do knock pitchers out for a long time, but it'll heal on its own eventually. You just got to wait for it. It's with a shoulder, you might need surgery, or who knows.
All right, now it's always interesting to see which hitters are the ones that get the bumps down due to pitching getting bumped up. Marcus Semien. This is I don't know if surprising is the right word, because I've always been kind of skeptical about Semien. I appreciated the price this year with Semien, but I'm still not running to draft him. Main event, ADP 125, OC 102. It's about a 23 pick difference right now. That's a big jump. It's like a round and a half, give or take, fall for Semien in this format. Is this just maybe drafters saying, I'm just going to punt second base and take some of the late darts? Or how do you kind of feel this is taking place?
I think it's just the pitchers are going ahead of Semien, and he's the old boring guy, which typically in a 15 is appealing. But in the main event, a lot of people just go for who can pop ahead of their projections. And I'm kind of intrigued by this price, because this is now a ninth round ADP for Semien when he was sometimes going in the seventh in draft and holds. So I guess in the right build, I'd be very open to taking him at this point. It's just you kind of need a little bit of a bounce back. And the underlying stats last year suggested that he got unlucky, and he's still fast enough to steal Semien. So, I mean, if I could give him at 144, that's a gift, I think, because you're looking at 80 runs, at least 90 if he continues to hit leadoff for the Rangers, and 20 homers. Maybe he gets back to 15 steals and like a 250 average. That volume, even at this price in the main event, is still so valuable. So I think he'll be a target for me. I didn't incorporate him into my draft plan, but I think I may have put his name down as an option in that range.
Especially if he his max of 141.
Yeah, that's the 10th round.
Yeah, that's fallen a lot. That's crazy. Speaking of another guy falling, and Bubba's Burgers do not appreciate this. Jake Berger, ADP of 130 in the main events, 108 in the OCs. I understand Berger, I guess maybe people think is volatile, but again, you look at his stat line, he hits 250, hits around 30 home runs, drives in his runs, and a great offense. I'm not wrapping my head around why he's falling, unless there's, again, I know people have to fall. I get that argument, but I don't understand why he's one of them, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
So I'll plug Curlin's tracker. He hit 5th on the 11th, Berger did. He didn't play on the 12th. He hit 5th on the 6th. Well, on 3-6, he hit 5th. On 3-9, he hit 6th. On 3-8, he hit 5th. And I think Roster Resource has Berger hitting 8th. So maybe people think that he's not going to hit that high in the lineup, but I trust that he'll hit like 5th or 6th.
That's right, man. I never believed it was going to be 8. I've said that from day one. Like 8 is not how it's going down. So
he's too good of a hitter, I think, for that.
I'm with you.
Not that he's a great hitter, but he's solid enough. He's got great power. I don't know. I think, like with Semien, I think this is a great target if you need a corner. So I'm not going to complain about his ADP if it continues to fall.
Yeah, I would love that ADP if it continues to fall. Same team too, ironically, with those two.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something, just the depth in Texas. I don't know, but
Wyatt went up and these guys went down. It has to balance out.
Got to balance out somewhere. But yeah, love the burger dip. I'd be buying that all day long. Maybe they should brand that. Another third baseman taking a plunge here is Eugenio Suarez, which, like we always joke, it's usually Chapman and Suarez next to each other, but Chapman's still hanging out pretty early. Suarez keeps taking the fall. His ADP is 187 in the main events, 164 in the OCs. I still have no reason to not like Suarez, but maybe against the boring, volatile player here, Ben.
Yeah, I think this main event drafters are a little sharper. I don't know. It's with Suarez, I didn't draft him at all in DCs. It was more just because, not because I was sour that he burned me last year, but let me find him on my rankings. Yeah, I'm kind of in line with his ADP where I have him ranked. So I think it's a much fairer price than where he was going in OCs. It's after looking at his stats more, it feels like I thought the decline was more because of him playing in Seattle than anything else. Because if you kind of take out Seattle's season for Suarez, it's been pretty consistent in terms of power, and I think average as well. So he's like a cheaper version of Berger in terms of what he should provide. I mean, but Suarez has provided pretty good runs in RBI in the past, and that's definitely one of his. I don't know. I think the average won't be as bad as like 220, but I don't know. He's very boring in the same sense as Simeon is, and I don't know. I think it's just probably drafters want their pitchers, and they can worry about a boring third baseman later. I think that's what it comes
So
down to.
we've mentioned it time and time again. Pitchers up, hitters falling. Do you fall into line with that, or you just keep following your rankings and you'll figure it out as it goes on?
It depends. I think a lot of movement happens in the 100s because in like DCs you can have reliable all full-time hitters a lot of the time, but then if someone in that range shows like a change, look at Sanchez for example. There's that people think he can move up to be a top 100 pitcher essentially, so that's why they get targeted like that. And I have that comparison up, so let me pull it back up. There wasn't a big shift in the early mains compared to the DCs in February in terms of how many pitchers were going in that range. It is increasing a little bit, but maybe by like 3 pitchers per round cumulatively are going more often in the mains. But yeah, they can only go up so much in the 100s. I think it's the 100 to 200 range where you see more movement, and so I think that's why the guys that we've talked about so far are 100 plus ADPs. But yeah. I'd want to hear someone else who does mains to comment on that. But that's how I view it, at least.
All right, we got Anthony Santander, new team in Toronto, ADP 107 in the mains, 87 in the OC. So, doesn't hit for a horrific average, not great, but mainly a power only bat. Power is still very important. Usually that gets pushed up as well. So this is another one of those maybe just boring players taking a dip. I don't know on this one. I don't have a lot of Santander to begin with, but seeing him fall, I just love to hear what the potential logic is.
I think it's a profile. I think he's like a 3-category hitter.
It's power, it's homers, maybe RBIs, and mediocre batting average.
And you're essentially paying for, well, not essentially, you are paying for a career year because his ADP has jumped from last year. So, true. And I remember seeing early on that his Statcast didn't really support his breakout, really. Like there's not as much red as you'd expect with a 44 homer hitter. And he's going to a new park. There's been trouble with offense in Toronto. So, I mean, that's why he's been a void for me, Santander. And I think the main event drafters are probably seeing the same things. And are the thing they probably think they can get power from, like, it's just homers that he's providing. And, of course, runs and RBIs. But if you're not getting steals at that point or a good average, I think it's definitely a little overpriced for him.
Yeah, I'm going to highlight these next two to get to somebody else. But Royce Lewis just continues to drop. Just going to keep throwing that out there down to 135. His OC was 117. And August, some guy drafted him in the 3rd round of a DC. So there's just a massive plummet taking place in this one. Goldschmidt down to 180 from 164. To me, that's strictly a boring veteran thing. Like, I'll take that dip all day if you need a late first baseman or corner infielder. But the question I have for you is, we talked about all of those closers, all of them in the first 15, 20 picks that are 15 or 20 risers. We got one here. The second pitcher off the board on the faller situation is Robert Suarez of the San Diego Padres. ADP of about 113 in the main event so far. ADP of around 97 in the March OCs. We're talking about a 16-pick drop there with Robert Suarez. I know there's the rumblings that they might trade him at some point, but there's also the rumblings that they're not making trades at all right now until the team basically screws up. Are you buying the dip here to get a guy that should be the closer for at least half the season?
I think he's an appealing buy, but I don't want my RP1 this late, and I don't want my RP2 this early. So,
Gotcha.
so I think he's like a no man's land for me in terms of ADP. If for whatever reason I get shut out of earlier closers along the way in one of my main events, then okay, he has the job for now. And I think it was on, I see it through Closer Monkey, but it's essentially Reliever Recon. They had a breakdown of Suarez in today's email they sent out. And one of the things Jewett or whoever wrote it did was they broke out his first and second half splits. And despite the surface numbers being bad in the second half for Suarez, the Sierra and the swing strike rate didn't really move at all. And I think his swinging strike rate actually increased in the second half from like 12 something to 13.1, if I remember correctly, for Suarez. So it wasn't all that bad. The only thing, though, is that he's not as dominant with the Ks as the other relievers where he was going. But now that you're past pick 100, and for now, I mean, at least there's fab with these leagues. So if he does lose the job, it's not the end of the world. I mean, you're probably have to spend some fab to find him, but hopefully it's the only thing that you really need at that point. So it's definitely more appealing at this point because he's going in line with Tanner Scott, who may not have the full share of his team saves, even though they're going to get a lot of wins, the Dodgers. But if they blow everybody out, how many saves will they get? So I think Suarez is definitely becoming more appealing right now than he was to me before.
Yeah, I just want to highlight it because he's one of the closers. Like we talked about, all the rising closers, and Kirby's injured, so you figure most guys falling pitching wise are hurt. The only thing really hurting Suarez is A, you're getting him off a career year, he's old, and B, they might trade him. But physically, dude's fine for all we know. So that stood out to be quite interesting to me. Anybody else you'd like to highlight here on the falling side before we do a little deeper guy, just kind of quick hitters on some deeper guys?
I'm surprised at how early Fried was going in the OCs because his main event ADP of 102 is kind of like his DC main event.
True.
Stevenson's falling.
It's seeing Toglia fall, by the way. After
I noticed. I was looking at him. People are worried about the K rate, which I understand. I haven't drafted him yet, but there's a lot of upside with him as well. I think Adames is still falling. I mean, he's kind of back to where he was going in DCs. I think.
Yeah.
We're seeing 3 catchers here when we've lost so many catchers so far. Maybe people are like, I'm just going to punt the position now. And
that's what it feels like.
Which I've considered it too, honestly. Like if I can't get the guys I really like, I might just wait. And I definitely still want one that's I can rely on, but my catcher too, I think I'll be okay with just taking a flyer in the 200s, maybe. A lot of corners, a lot of first and third basemen actually on this list.
A lot of corners.
Which I just noticed.
Yeah, a lot of corners, which kind of surprising to me just because it feels like when I get deep in my 15s, that corner pool gets real ugly real quick. But the biggest surprise to me, I guess, and we'll move on, is Bubba Shett is falling. He's fallen 15 picks essentially. He's 135 ADP in main events, 120 in OCs. To me, that's just a surprise because it seems like everywhere you turn, it's Bubba Shett bounce back season, Bubba Shett. And it's like the main event folks aren't thinking it, like they're not saying it's gonna be bad, but they're not pushing them up like the OC folks were. So that stood out to me a little bit as well.
So I'll tie that up. One last thing I've noticed while you were talking is that Bichette falls under this too. The thing with the corners, none of them steal. So I think the main event drafters are going for steals, and Bichette doesn't. We can't trust Bichette to steal anymore. And then all these corners aren't going to steal either, so that they're going for power speed options. I think, which if you can plan your draft properly, you can get a lot of good bargains this way by attacking these fallers at the right times.
Yeah, that is a great point. Yeah, most of them, and majority of them do not run at all. All right, we'll do a couple quick hitters here outside the top 200. Like some will still fall inside the top 200, but Ben, we focused on the biggest risers and fallers in just the top 200 ADP to make them relevant for pretty much any format, as we said. But for you in deeper leagues, maybe you are in the main event this league, or you're drafting something else in regards to that. Here's the biggest risers and fallers, period. And Chris Martin is the biggest riser, 211 in main events, 272 in OCs. I've honestly been kind of surprised that Martin isn't moving as much as we get farther or closer and closer to the season, honestly. Are you willing, though, to pay a 211 ADP for Chris Martin?
That's tough. But if you have the strategy of paying up for your RP1 and then you're fine taking some flyers, I think he's a good choice to do that. But I'd rather be more like 250 to take a chance, because I do have Martin in a DC, and I hope he does keep the job for that reason, because I think I had a couple of question marks on that team. I think I had Urseg. But I mean, to choose to take him at this point, I just don't trust that he'll stay the closer for that long. Maybe they sign Robertson eventually. I know they're worried about the luxury tax, but maybe if once it prorates to be lower than what they would have to pay to go over with Robertson, maybe they sign him or something, or that prospect who they want to keep as a starter, Teodo is his last name, if they decide to use him. But I don't know. Like, you look at any depth chart, Martin's the guy. So if you have faith that's going to stick, I get it, but I don't have the faith that's going to stick.
Yeah, I don't think it'll stick. That's been my biggest deterrent with him. But yeah, the fact they're not doing anything yet, it's like, okay, I can post 200 and take my chances and then maybe make moves after that. I love Teodo. Big fan Teodo. Wrote about him for ALPT tomorrow a couple weeks back. They sent him to AAA already, but he will be up at some point this season. Dude is just electric. He reminds me a lot of Camilo Duvall, and that's a good and a bad thing. Let's put it that way. Because that means he can close down games, but the control could become a problem as well. Ryan Weathers on the move. I don't think we have to talk much about that. That's been well documented. He's up to 258 in main events, 300 in OCs. I was proud of myself, Ben, for completing my OLAC so well. My last pick was a $5 Lodolo. I walked away in round 17. I just waited for the reserves. Part of me was like, should I have done a $5 Weathers instead of a $5 Lodolo? And I'm like, no, we know who Lodolo is. Bubba, stay focused. Weathers went for $3, and I'm sitting there just going, but yeah, that's how the cookie crumbles. I'm fine with the bump personally. Like, this is one of those upside plays you can take a chance on. I get it. If you trust your rankings, probably doesn't fit the mold for you. So this is a test right here. Would you be willing to pay the bump on a guy like Ryan Weathers that's had this helium?
Yeah, when I was looking at my rankings before we hopped on the podcast, I noticed how much it had jumped, and I moved him accordingly because I kind of want to follow the ADP at this point still with Weathers. It's annoying that it's this high now, but it makes sense why he is up here. So it's just one of those things you kind of have to bite the bullet sometimes.
Yep. Okay. That's why I was hoping you would go that way. Like, eventually, like, some things he's got to pivot with, and that's kind of one of them for sure. It's fun. Like, we talked about those catchers falling. Patrick Bailey's on the rise, ironically, which was kind of interesting to me. I guess it makes more sense because you need more catchers in a 15 than a 12. I guess I'll stop you right there.
You need 30 catchers.
Yeah, I'll stop you right there. It dawned on me when I saw the ADP number for OCs basically doesn't get drafted to. Yep. Yeah, it dawned on me real quick. See, sometimes I'm good with numbers when they're in front of me. I just can't put it together. So I figured that out real quick.
The abacus had to calculate, so it took a little bit longer for you.
I just took a few circuits there, but we got there. Max Scherzer, this is one I'm very intrigued on. 209 in main events, 248 essentially in OCs. I love the idea of a post 200 Max Scherzer. When I draft Max Scherzer, I'm prepping myself to not get all the innings in the world, but to get good innings when I have him. There's still obvious many concerns. Where are you at on Max Scherzer?
Oh, actually, I have him at 208. He had the 14% swing strike rate last year in the limited time that Scherzer pitched, and I had noticed that when it was DC season, but he's not a guy you can trust for the whole DC season, of course. So that's why I didn't draft him anywhere. But I knew that once Fab season came along, I would be interested in him. It's just that I didn't expect him to go up over 150 picks in an ADP. I mean, it makes sense. It has the name value. So I guess I am willing to go with him if I feel I have a good foundation in pitching, but it's definitely an adjustment to if you were drafting him in DC Scherzer, now you're taking him like 10 rounds earlier.
Yeah. Then there's Jeff Hoffman, Nick Martinez, who's just a polarizing figure all around to me. Drew Rasmussen. Casey Mize is one of those guys with a good spring, getting a ton of helium there. Joey Ortiz is getting some love. I like that a lot, up to 262 from 297 in OCs. Chris Bubich is another one of those spring training buzz guys. I think I picked him up for like $1 or $2 and 2 auctions. I think I got him in a late round somewhere. I know I got Chris Bubich here somewhere. There's Justin Martinez, Romano. Reese Olson is on the move. I got him for $3 in the auction last night. Pretty pumped on that one, honestly. Anybody else, like, you could talk about guys I mentioned there, or anybody else on the list? I don't want to keep you all day, but definitely some names that if we did this next week might be in the top 200.
Yeah, probably. I feel like a lot of you can really, as I look at the names, I can think about why they are moving up so much for the format change. Like Nolan Shamwell goes from not being drafted in an OC to now being a almost 300 ADP in the main event just because of the volume and the but I don't know. Even I wouldn't want him as a corner or first baseman in my main event because there's no upside at this point in the draft. So yeah, it's the last thing I'll say is Chandler Simpson went at 221.
Yes, I saw that. I was wondering if you're gonna. That's insane.
So early.
That's insane. Like, my guy might not even have a job, and you want to talk about rabbit? Yeah. Like, this is Malik Smith all over again.
Yep.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he proves us wrong, but that's all it feels like to me. And I know I'll say as much in my race preview. Jason Collette loved Chandler Simpson. Jason Collette also didn't think we'd see Chandler Simpson until like the All-Star break. So, like he said, like in a DC, he's a great pick because he'll come up at some point and he'll steal like 40 bases. But other than that, probably not much love for him in a redraft. Like that's pretty much what it was. And given that podcast was like over 2 months ago, but like he mentioned him for the reasons why everybody loves him now. But yeah, it's still a tough one to get too excited about.
Yep. So thank you.
Yep. A couple fallers, though. Garrett Cole, naturally. Luis Gil, naturally. Francisco Alvarez. Okay, so injury, demotion. Jose Miranda getting almost 100-pick difference. In main events, it's 450. OC's 357. Is Ty France doing this much damage to Jose Miranda's reputability?
Yeah, he got usurped by France.
The French do it again.
Yeah, So I guess the news must have came out earlier in March. That's why there's so many OC picks. Oh, I don't know how many he was drafted in. I mean, you can't tell that from here, but yeah, it's just he's a bench bat right now, it seems like. So makes sense.
Yep. We got Horton, Ornelas. Most of these names are guys we expect to start them in the minors. Trying to find a relative name that makes sense here because, again, most minors or hurt. Winfield Perez is getting 447 in mains, 360 in OCs. That should be flipped in my if I don't think Perez should be 360 in mains, but he's more of a 15 than a 12 anyways. So that stood out. But yeah, most of these guys are just fringe can they break camp guys. So I'm not going to name them all off, but anyway, stand out to you here and also ADP and OC stops at 360. So that's going to take quite the gap as well.
Yeah. So they're basically going so the ADP for the OCs is basically a last pick flyer.
Yeah.
The one that really moved is Caballero. He went from 318 to 409 in mains. Okay. I think Walls is going to start, so that's probably why.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to look for guys who aren't in the 350s or higher in the OCs.
See, Ty France fell too, which is what he's probably not an OC play, so never mind.
Yeah. Grayson dropped 80 spots, no surprise there.
DJ Hers is falling.
Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah, it's like I can't even draft him right now. It's making me very sad.
Kirby Yates dropped 70 spots, 236 to 307. That's
interesting.
Yeah, you said Hers. Ben Joyce. Yeah, someone was commenting on how a lot of reliever specs are still going in mains. I think it's because of how early it is still.
Yeah.
Gonsolin's hurt.
Jerkson Profar, 225 in mains, 182 in OCs. That's a 43-pick drop. That seems people must be really worried about the wrist, or they don't want to pay for the career year.
Probably the career year. Well, I mean, it could be the wrist too, honestly, because that happened not at the start of March. So there's probably been a little drop for that reason. Kirby's there again.
The mascot.
Rengifo, the mascot, because of the hamstring injury. He's next up. Sean Murphy's hurt. Yeah,
Zebby Matthews fell quite a bit, and there's a lot of pub behind him too.
Aren't they? They're going to start though with Simeon Woods and Paddock, though, probably.
Paddock.
Right?
Probably, but man, they shouldn't. But probably, yes.
Yeah, if Bubba Chandler is not getting speculated on as highly as he was in OCs. Brandon Lau's dropped 30 spots, so that's like a legit drop. That's interesting.
Josh Young, 23 spots. And there's Berger. Yeah, so interesting stuff. Kyle Manzardo almost not even getting drafted in OCs to 374 in the main. So at least some Manzardo love there, to say the least.
It's funny how Arias fell from a 12 to a 15.
Yeah, you wouldn't think so. Be the opposite.
No. If anything, yeah.
Here we are. There's Goldie. There's Cabrian Hayes, who basically doesn't get drafted in 12s. So there's another guy with a little bit. Walker Buehler getting a 15-pick drop. That's a little surprising, but maybe injury concerns there.
Could be. Evan Carter, who I'm a fan of, I'm happy that he's dropping. I'll take that.
Yeah. Interesting list. As it gets narrowed down, like Stephen Kwan, you'd think he'd be more popular in a 15, not a 12, and he drops 13 picks between the two. It's like a round 10 Stephen Kwan actually doesn't suck, I would say, in a main event. That's actually kind of appealing, to say the least. But any other thoughts on the risers and fallers, so I can get you out of here to get some dinner and go play some pickleball on a Thursday night?
Got a dink later tonight. I think it. I mean, it feels like the Vegas ADP is like its own separate. I mean,
Yes.
Not only because of the
drafting
time
live changes everything.
Yes, so I can only take this with a grain of salt for my own reference points, because I think pitchers will go up even more at least in the early rounds come Saturday. So I'm ready for that adjustment that I'll have to make on the fly potentially. So yeah, I mean, if we were to do this, like I said, in a week, I think the differences would be even more drastic in some cases.
For sure. Before we leave, I want to leave you with this. Ryan Bloomfield stops by. Did I just walk in on a gun show? So that was directed to you, Ben. That was directed to you. All right, well, we'll wrap it up there. Let's give our support to Ben. He's heading into the mansion this weekend, to the MTM house, to the crazy house, to draft his main and have some fun at the party on Saturday night. So wishing you the best, my friend. Looking forward to hearing how that goes and chatting it up with you to get the whole MTM experience. I'm looking forward to it. But make sure y'all follow Ben on Twitter at BreakingBen_T. I'm at BD Entrick, and for now, this has been with Bubba, episode 752. Catch y'all next time.